Our last song and dance, man, Skip Cunningham. Which I'm very excited to learn a lot from today. So we are very blessed to have him here today. We also have Mr. Chester Whitmore. So if you didn't know, today is National Tap Day, which is why we're doing this class. We did tap dancers. So I do have a lot of questions. I want to get this started because I am so interested to talk to you. So the first question that I have is, I learned you at one point in your life when you were younger wanted to, this is so intriguing to me, you wanted to deliver expensive furs. And yeah, I told you I researched it. I'm coming with it. I'm interested though as to how that came about and why that was how did you even get into that thought process?
Well, at the age of 10, that just sounded exciting. If I was delivering furs, it had an element of danger. At that point, I had seen too many movies. And that's all it was. A little boy's way of thinking. I wanted to drive a big highway truck and deliver things that are expensive. And that's all it was.
I think that's pretty cool though, because it's all learning.
I didn't get anywhere near doing that. It never ever happened in any way. I never tried it.
Thank you, Skip. Another question, I don't know if a lot of people know this. You didn't start tapping in actual tap shoes, which I think is something that we all need to talk about, is tap didn't start with tap shoes. And I think that that's a misconception, but having someone here who learned how to tap, I'm very interested about your first teacher and how that started and why you didn't get to wear tap shoes, because I think that it would help the audience understand a little bit of the history.
So one day I came home from school, 3 o'clock, and my mother told me to get dressed in my finest little knee pant suit. And we got in Chicago, the transit system was all red cars. They called it Big Red, and it was a streetcar. Being from Chicago, I lived in the suburbs, and it was almost like the country to the south side. The south side, you might know, is in Chicago, is the counterpart of New York's Harlem. All the black nightclubs were there, the most famous. Al Capone and his ilk were reigning supreme. So that was about 1940. I wasn't old enough to be able to pay attention. I didn't know what my mother was, why she wanted me to dress like that on a weekday. But we took the streetcar down to 5419 Calumet, right in the middle of the south side. It's a dance school owned by Miss Sadie Bruce. She was my mentor, and that's where I started to take dance. I remember it was a long ride and a long walk to the studio by walking across the south side. When we approached the door, there was a basement in that address. I heard this clickety-clacking going. I had no idea what it was. And then we walked in the door. And I saw these little boys my age, and they were dancing. I couldn't imagine what they had on their feet, but I heard it. And so we went and took a seat. That was my first dance class. Through that process, I must have shown a lot of prowess at paying attention. No, I'll take that back. I didn't pay attention the first time. They had a candy machine and this and that, and that's all I was playing with. My mother was getting very discouraged. Sadie said, leave it alone, it'll be all right. So I had one class. After that one class, I never had another class. She suggested that I take private lessons. I remember private lessons were 75 cents. 75 cents. Now you know how old I am. Well, class was 75 cents and private lessons were $1.50. But I'm going all the way back from the beginning to right now. Anyway, I got excited about wearing these tap shoes, but I couldn't have them until I showed an interest. So I was working because I was the only one dancing out there with leather shoes on. And I'm saying, "Ma, I can't. Why don't my feet sound like this?" And she said, "Well, you don't have your shoes yet, but I'm not going to get them." When I got those shoes, I never stopped till today. Now, yep. It wasn't long before, so if that's the age of 5, by the time I was 10, I didn't know exactly what was going on, but we had recitals at the Civic Opera House downtown in the wintertime, and at the famous Regal Theater in the spring. So from then on, I started performing before people. Sadie took a special interest in me and coached me along. She had been an athlete. I don't think she was an Olympian. But I was learning so fast and so interested in what I was doing, I would come back knowing the step. This is what my father would do. When we got home, I was on the second floor, living on the second floor. We had a linoleum floor in the kitchen. He would make me practice right then as soon as I left class. He got all the movements and say them to me. He'd make me make the noise with them. That's the way it started. Oh man, I don't know how you found out about this. Yeah, this is deep to me. And that's the way it started. By the time I got back to class the next week, I was doing this step. I began to be a little star within the school. The whole 2-hour recital, I wasn't in the class anymore. I was closing the show. She hooked me up with a little girl by the name of Sheila Johnson. And in Chicago, Lindy was called Jitterbug. That's how long I've known about it. That's all it was called. It wasn't called Lindy at all. It was Jitterbug. So she took tap to it. I just want to tell you that the correlation of Lindy, Jitterbug, and tap, have enjoyed the same popularity at the same time. And a lot of the steps, where you put your feet on the floor with Lindy, has a tap component to it. I know that goes back. So we jitterbug and tap dance in the same performance and sang the songs of the day emanating from rhythm and blues, jazz. I remember when swing music evolved into jazz in the black community and black musicians. It went from Tommy Dorsey to Count Basie and Duke Ellington. It was that kind of transition. And at that point, a lot of white musicians were so interested in that transfer and the way Charlie Parker played, and then Gene Atkins. I mean, I'm living through this process. I remember it like it was yesterday. They liked those runs that Charlie Parker made. They didn't know that he could play any song that he was playing in any key, including the key of E. And most musicians do not like to play anything in the key of E. If I walked and I wanted to sing in the key of E, they'd say, man, can you make that flat? No, it's personal experience. So I remember that involvement with the music, and I went right with it. Lionel Hampton, Ray Ellington, Count Basie, all the music that you love to dance to. At the age of 10, I was evolving in the middle of that. And that's what I've danced to all my life. So this little girl and I, Sadie managed to get us in contests in the nightclub. Now we were too young to be in there, but my father was with me all the time, and her mother and father were with her. We won every contest we were in. They don't know that you don't follow animals and children on the stage. Everything they could do, we could do it. And we had the flexibility in their body to do it in a way that they couldn't do. And it knocked the people out. We always won first prize. So that was my childhood. Then I met this dude. No, that's not true.
How did you reach Chester?
Well, in 1983, 82, 83, we started a club called the Hoofers Club, reminiscent of the old Hoofers Club in New York. But some of the members of the old club were still alive. John Bubbles, members of the Step Brothers, the Nicholas Brothers, and they remember that club because they were in and out of it. But we started a new one, and they helped us as far as trying to act like that club. It didn't last very long. I ended up becoming president. I couldn't believe being president over John Bubbles. I'm talking about or Harold Nicholas of the Nicholas president. So the club went pretty good. We had a couple of shows, but Chester was the youngest member. Chester is not only an aficionado of this art form, he was that more than anything, but he's a historian himself. As I'm telling this story from my perspective, he knows the story, not even knowing me, but he's listening to me now. He knows a lot of it, but he doesn't know this inside that I'm telling you now. He knew people all around. I might have been around. Anyway, with this little girl, I was making money, and I was excited about it, and I became a young professional. I evolved into being a tap dancer. So right now, as I speak, I'm 88 years old. Last month, I hit 88. And I feel good. That's what you call hard sock. So, I feel like his surrogate father. Because out of the club, and him being the youngest, and Susan so enthusiastic about being around us, we are almost only two left in that club. Yeah. So we met at John Bubbles' house. John Bubbles and Bucket Bubbles. And I'm a bit ahead of myself. Well, what happened to that period when I was younger? I won a lot of contests. I don't want to term it this way, but this is more like what it is. I evolved out of the black community of the South Side. And I was winning contests on the radio before television. And then it went to television. So I ended up doing the Ed Sullivan Show, Mary Griffin Show, Night Show, over my New York.
You did Flip Williams show. Huh? You did Flip Williams show too, didn't you? Flip Williams.
Oh, Flip Wilson.
No, Flip Williams, sorry, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've been doing this a long time. I love it now the way I love it then. And I'm trying to ease out of it now because I don't think I had any business doing what I did. To say it.
So we can hear you.
I got somebody who's coming along behind me that I respect a lot when it comes up to performing. You got it all from me. And some others. But that's my story pretty much in a nutshell. And I'm still at it. I think I'm performing before I leave here this evening. Is that tomorrow night?
Tonight?
I lost my shoe. Tonight.
Tonight.
What time?
7.
Oh, well, I gotta go right now. Anyway, that's kind of my story in a nutshell. There are a lot of fillers in there. A lot of experience. It's taken me literally to every continent. The West Indies, the East Indies, Australia, New Zealand, up and down South America. I've been representing all that time. It's been fun, and I still love it. But this might be next to my last gig, as they say. I tried to retire in 2018. I retired myself. I thought, this is not going to do it anymore. So much so that I couldn't find my music this time. I mean, I just tucked it away and I don't know where it is in the garage. So I don't know what I'm going to do tonight. So that's kind of my story. It's been long, it's been exciting. Sadie Bruce, I just love her. It's interesting because I could feel that she was taking a special interest in me because I began to separate out from my little boy's class. And so, like I said, from then on, I hope I've made her proud because I've been almost everywhere I can think of. The jungles of South America. I couldn't believe it. I worked the Intercontinental Hotel chain, and they have hotels everywhere. They have one in the Philippines, and they have one in the Amazon jungle, the Terraria. I mean, really beautiful. I couldn't believe this place in the middle of the jungle. An insurance man came to see my show there, and that's what he happened to be, and he says, how would you like to go on a little historic trip with me? I said, I'd love it. I wasn't married at the time, and I could take chances. We ended up getting in a dugout canoe. A dugout canoe. with an outboard motor on the back. I said, "Man, where the hell are we going?" He said, "We were going to an African village." The flag was, it had a white circle on it, a yellow circle, a brown circle, and a black circle. That was the flag. Suriname, Dutch Guiana. And a whole African contingent. When we pulled up in the boat, the women were standing around with nothing covering their breasts. I got my camera right away. I said, "What's going on, man?" He said, I took a photo of this lady, and it must have been her husband who came out behind her. Not near you or anybody I know. And so the guy said to me, he said, "He wants some money." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You're a tourist," that's what he feels. And he said, "You got to give 50 cents or $1 or something." I said, "Man." And I gave him money, he went on the back and sat down. But those are the kind of experiences I've had all my life. And I don't think I've even told my wife this story. But that's a fact. And so, I'm telling it in bits and pieces. I tried to start to write this book in 1980. But I didn't think I was important enough or well known enough to write it and have me make any money. And, but I'm going to do it now because this is it wasn't the time in 1980, but it is the time now. So my wife's a poet. She just released her first book. It's called Blooming Tulips. Barnes and Noble. The first time she wrote me a poem, it was not wrote me a poem, but she wrote a poem and showed it to me. It was 1976. I couldn't believe it. I said, "This is talent." She's just now releasing a book now, so she will be able to help you a lot. And so, by the way, don't forget Blooming Tulips. Some great poetry. In 1976, I couldn't say, "I'm married to you and you did this?" She's really good, really, really good.
She's here today, right?
Yes, she's here. So her name is Sharon Cunningham, my last name. And so tomorrow I'm going to see what I got. No, tonight. You better come and get me one.
Did you know Mr. Cunningham was involved a lot of jazz, the innovation of jazz was changing in the 50s. Of course, a lot of performers that did nightclubs, vaudeville, different other places that was now television was the hottest thing. And this guy, like I said, played at majority every variety show, talk host, and did that transition for tap dancers. I'm saying, speaking as a tap dancer, where do you go? The evolution. He broke that barrier and led a lot of dancers to say, oh, television is the thing. You got a chance, the world got a chance to see when you hit. Merv Griffin, you know, Johnny Carson, all these. Some of you guys don't know what a variety shows. These variety shows were very important all over the world, all over the nation. And then when they were shown, everybody, he was on every show. Mike, how many times were you on, Mike?
So Merv's show in the 60s, I remember it was 1962, I did the first one. I did his show 13 times. But he was with Metro Media in those days. He wasn't with CBS like he was as he left. And with Metro Media, you'll see the initial show in real time. But locales like maybe Seattle, they don't see the show until maybe a week later. So I was being seen more than just that initial performance. It was being seen at different times in other cities. Yeah. I played Vegas a lot. I was drafted into the Army in Chicago, but I was in LA when I was drafted. At the time, they had a program where you could volunteer to draft, and I was a professional when I was drafted. But I didn't want to join the Army, or any other branch of service, because if you joined, you had to stay in 3 years. And I was a professional at that time. I didn't want to interrupt my career. So I volunteered to draft. I was 20, almost 21. And I took a trip with my uncle and aunt out to Los Angeles. Graduated from college, and he asked me, what are you going to do during the summer? I said, well, I guess I'm going to gig around the South Side and get a job. He says, how would you like to go with your aunt and I to Los Angeles? I said, oh, I'd love to. I'd never been out of Chicago. I hadn't been any further than Gary, which was 30 miles from my home. And I said, yeah. So I jumped at the chance. So I ended up in Los Angeles, and we stayed with friends from Chicago. And I was looking at this talent show on television, like the ones I used to do in Chicago. I had my dance shoes with me, but I didn't have the kind of clothes I needed to appear on it. But I went anyway. I got on the streetcar again, and it was coming, I think it was Bob Yankel Chevrolet or something like that. And I ended up on the show that night on television that quick. The people we were staying with said, when did you leave the house? And they hadn't seen me perform. They knew she said, boy, you are great. How did you do that? When were you at the house? How did you get on TV? I said, well, I got my suit and my shoes and I just went. Well, in the middle of all of that, because I had volunteered to draft, you could be drafted at any time at that point, but you only had to do 2 years. And that was right in my alley. I get a call from my dad saying, Uncle Sam sent you greetings. I said, what do you need? He says, you've been drafted into the Army. I said, what? I said, but I'm not home. He says, I know, get your butt back here. You only got a week or so to get it together. So I entered the Army in Los Angeles. And I took my basic training in Tacoma, Washington. Yeah, close to here, yeah. I didn't know anything about Seattle except that it rained a lot. In geography in elementary school, it was one of the rain-filled forests of the world. And I said, wow, man. On the firing range, I was 21. I made 21 in April, and I took the basic training here in the spring. One rifle expert, and the carbine marksman. That was my birthday present to myself. But this is inside stuff. Oh, I don't know all this stuff. And I was in the Army for 2 years, and I was in basic training for 2 months. I didn't want to go anywhere near down south. When I was in Chicago, kids used to go down south to visit their relatives. And my mother said, no, you can't go. No, you can't go. You have the wrong kind of personality. And so I didn't go. But in the barracks, I would tell the guys, I said, I don't know where we're going. I don't know where I'm going in my next aid, but I sure don't want to go down south. So in about your 6th week, they call you in, all gathered around, to see where you were going to go for your next training. They talked about Fort Dix, New Jersey, Fort Leonard, Missouri. Oh, by the way, I did not want to go back to Chicago to go into the Army because I heard nothing but bad about Fort Leonard, New Jersey. I mean, Fort Leonard was in, not far from Chicago. Missouri, I think. But I'm droning on here a little bit, but anyway, we're all sitting around, and the story about me was, this dude don't want to go down south, y'all. You are going to Augusta, Georgia. They call 6 names off to signal school. They said, Cunningham, you're going down south, boy. And everybody in the room was teasing me because you're on your way down south now. Anyway, I ended up not going down. Yeah, I went to Augusta, Georgia, signal school. Now, there's something they do in the service that I didn't know about until then. They know a little bit about you when they get ready to send you to a special school. Now, me being a tap dancer, certainly I had rhythm. They were sending me to signal school, and that was International Morse Code. And if you know anything about that, the idea is you gotta have rhythm. But not only rhythm, you're going to be garbled by the enemy. So the garbling coming in, you've got to stay focused, send a message through that. So that's why they sent me there. I mean, I didn't know that I had to be there for a while. They knew about that, and they knew I'd been in show business. But you had to get a certain clearance. You had to get a certain clearance. That was top secret. Almost. Now my brother took dance lessons too. He's a couple years younger than I am. And he ended up getting a top secret clearance. But he took this program too. And so I was just talking to him a couple of weeks ago. I didn't want to ask him then because I knew that he couldn't tell me. He got a top secret clearance. The reason I couldn't get one is because I had worked in nightclubs in Chicago. I'm serious. It took me all those years to realize that. If you had not worked in nightclubs, the gangsters owned them. There was a nightclub I worked that I wasn't paid out of the cash register in the kitchen. In cash. They didn't deal with any paper at all. I mean, from Los Angeles to New York. I was always paid, but the Army knew that. When I got my uniform, and my grandmother passed away in 1957, right at the end of my service training. So I missed my last 2 weeks in basic training so that I could go to my grandmother's funeral and go to my next post from there. So I went to see a neighbor. I wanted her to see me in my uniform. She said, boy, some men came here, they had suits on, and a couple of white men. I lived in a black neighborhood. She says, they wanted to know if I knew whether you peed in the bed or not. I said, what, are you joking with me? She says, no. I had no idea I was going to be seeing you so soon after that. are you out of the Army? I said, no. She said, well, that's what they wanted to know. Took me years to add it up, add it up, add it up. It all correlated with that MOS signal. So, I'm stationed in Boston at a Nike site, still in the Army. I didn't know my brother had joined the Army. He joined the Army. I was standing in the barracks and this dude was walking towards me. And it was my brother. I said, man, why are you in uniform? He said, I'm in the Army, Junior. I said, what? He got a top secret clearance. Because he had not worked professionally in a nightclub. See that little difference? They wanted me to lecture, so to speak. This is a chance now at this point in my life. And I'm writing this book, and this has helped me to write it. Talking to you here right now. I hadn't lost a contest performing almost ever. By the way, I sing and dance. So you're just talking about tap dancers and how far could you be go as a tap dancer? I'm digressing a little bit. Well, you can do TV like Fred Astaire and be in the movies, like the Nichols brothers, the Berry brothers. You can do that if you got lucky, but most people didn't get that lucky. And they were the greatest. I garnered a lot of what I knew watching them. And so I started singing. 1941, the Christmas song with Nat King Cole singing it came out. I had a buddy in my class, and he could sing too. And we would challenge each other. I mean, that's like playing on baseball and stuff. We'd be doing that. And so when that song came out by Nat, he said, man, I can sing Nat King Cole and you can't. I said, I bet I can. So he'd sing the song and I would judge him. Then I'd see a song. He said, I told you couldn't sing as me. Good as me. I said, oh yeah. So I became a professional singer too. I was signed to Motown for about a year. And I played Vegas as a singer-dancer. And I will sing tomorrow night. Tonight. Not a whole act, but I'm going to sing a song. So I took on the title of singer-dancer. I don't do one without the other, usually. And that's what I'm going to do tonight. So I got out of the Army. Now, that's 2 years, and I couldn't figure out, I didn't work professionally in the Army, well, a little bit. My given name is William Henry Cunningham, after my father. He called me Skip, always, just him. He's the only person who called me Skip. I didn't hear from anybody else. But while I was in the Army, I wanted to try to get some gigs, so I went and found an agent. There was a Bill Cunningham, comedian MC in town, and a Bill Cunningham, sports writer for the Boston Globe. He says, man, he says, I saw some of your work. He says, but if I book you, I'm going down to, you got to change your name to something else. I said, man, I don't want to change the name. He said, well, you got to change it to something. I said, my dad called me Skip Cunningham. I said, that's it, right there. I've had that name ever since. Everybody knows me as Skip. But that's why it was changed. And here I am, Skip.
tell them about the world's best musical that the jazz idiot he was hired to dance with great John Hendricks.
Well, that's the only one jazz-wise. Evolution of the Blues. Evolution.
Have you ever heard of John Hendricks, anybody? John Hendricks is the father of vocal genius.
Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross. Lambert, Hendricks, and
Ross. Yeah, John Hendricks was the father of vocalese, and he was created. He had pupils like Manhattan Transfer, Al Jarreau, Bobby McFerrin, and he had a Broadway show called Evolution of the Blues. And he was looking for a main man that could do all around, not just sing, dance, and guess who popped it in?
Well, you need to hear the true story. That's true. But Foster Johnson did this show in Los Angeles. He either didn't want to do it anymore. Yeah. So when they went to Chicago, they didn't know I was from Chicago. But they chose me to go to do the show there. That was the first time I had returned home. No, not the first time. But I returned home in that show. And I was the only member in the cast from Chicago. So they wanted to promote the show, and we were downtown in the Loop at Water Tower Place. And so the producers walked up to me and asked me if I'd do this radio show. Now there were other professionals doing other stuff, but I was the only one doing what I did. Not professional entertainers necessarily. They had a Chicago Tribune columnist on the show. She was the entertainment columnist. When they got to me and started talking about Chicago, now remember I just told you I started when I was 4 or 5 in Chicago. So I was born and raised. When I got into my talking about Chicago, like I'm talking to you right now, and she heard that, she said, man, I can't believe what I just heard. I said, what do you mean? She says, I don't know anybody from that period, and I'm an entertainment columnist, and I'm right for Chicago Tribune. Can I interview you just by yourself? And I said, of course. You know, but that's how I ended up in the show. But as soon as I got out of the Army in 1959, I was trying to figure which direction I was going to go. Now, the same dance teacher, Sadie Bruce, knew the entertainment columnist for the Chicago Defender. By the way, she was very, very famous. There were dance schools in Chicago. But her recitals were not at a school auditorium or a nightclub or something. These were big reviews. Dancing girls, dance beautifully, big costumes and stuff at the top venues. So she was well known. So when I got out, she got the entertainment columnist Earl Calloway to write a piece on me. Now her husband, not her husband, but a singer by the name of Billy Williams, of the Billy Williams Quartet. I don't know if any of you remember Sid Caesar and Imogen Coca. He came on every Sunday after the Ed Sullivan show. Well, Billy Williams was the black quartet on the show for the whole run of the 5 years. And he had been going to Vegas, and he had a hit record called I'm Gonna Sit Right Down and Write Myself a Letter. Fats Waller wrote it, but Billy had a $1 million $1 million seller on it. And oh yeah, he used the Timmy Rogers phrase in the song. That made it a hit. So he wanted to go back to Vegas with a review of young people. And I went down and interviewed at his apartment. By me being a singer and dancer, I fit perfectly. And he had Fletcher Henderson's music, which he danced to in Jitterbug. Horace Henderson was the band. A lot of professional black musicians in there. They were playing the strip at the Riviera Hotel. This is a period when Vegas really became Vegas because the Rat Pack was at the Sands, Louis Prima was at the Sahara, Nat King Cole played the Sands. But that's what I found myself in almost as soon as I stepped out of the Army. I had no idea where I was going to go, which way I was going to go. They took me into the review. And we played all the top nightclubs. We played Barbara Walters' father's nightclub on Broadway called the Latin Quarter, which coincidentally turned out to be the last Cotton Club. When the Cotton Club closed in Harlem, it went to 47th and Broadway, right in the theater district. They had people like Jimmy Durante playing there, Johnny Mathis, and so we were headlining there in a big review, and it was just everywhere we went, even Vegas. By playing the lounge, we did 4 shows a night. But getting back to, that's where I found myself right after I got out of the service. As far as I was concerned, for me, this was it. This was big time show business. I was in the midst of it. Everybody's trying to get to Vegas. Boy, you are in it now. 4 shows a night. Little Billy would come into the lounge. Louis Armstrong would come into the lounge. Frank Sinatra would come into the lounge. That's how hot our review was. And you didn't know they were in there because it was dark out where they were sitting, you know. So that's what happened to me stepping out of the Army. It didn't take long. I was out for a couple of weeks. And we played the Regal, we played the Latin Quarter, we played the New York Catskill Mountains, the Concord. So it was exciting from then on. I still haven't told you when I met this guy. I did, didn't I? I'm going to digress just a second. I was so interested in this young man because he was the epitome of show business, and I couldn't think of anybody else around other than myself doing what I do but him, once I got to know him. He's a student of it. He knew who I was. He knew where I had been. And he knew the rest of black dancers. He's a Lindy Hopper, a Jitterbugger, a Boogie Woogie area, when he had that. He literally does it all. And it's a pleasure to know you, man.
Maybe 2 questions.
Okay.
Because I don't want to run too far over, but
I didn't mean to bore you with all of that, but you got me started.
I actually wish we had a lot more time with you, but you know, maybe you and I can catch up someday, get some more information out and share it with people. I'd love to do that with you.
Well, are there any questions real quick about what I was just talking about? But that's who I am, and that's who you'll see tonight. This guy.
Does anyone have a question?
I will change clothes.
Sorry?
Change your shoes.
She said change shoes.
Oh, I'll have to do that, just for you.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
All right, stop.
I got it.
I hope to see you tonight, and I will dress up.
There was one question. How did you and Chester actually meet?
Well, I mentioned it. We had this Hoopers Club. When I say we, he was the youngest member in the club.
That's the first time you met him, is at the in the LA Youth
I
Club?
met him, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And we had the last of the top movie black tap dancers in that club. We met at John Bowles' house, number one. We had the Nicholas brothers. We had the Berry brothers represented. We had the Four Step brothers represented. And we had me. And there he was. A little rose about to bloom.
We got one more question here.
I heard you mention John Bowles. Did you ever get a chance to meet Bill Robinson?
No. Short story though. No. He's kind of the benchmark of the art form. Black or white or yellow or yellow. But I am a copacetic.
Last.
Last one, yeah.
They formed that club after Bill Robinson passed away. When I hit New York with the Billy Williams Review, working on Broadway at that venue, they picked me up, trying to extend the club. And my mentors were Huck Coles and Atkins, Pete Nugent, any of the corporate settings. And I guess I am one of the last who left. Yeah. Buster Brown. So that's the way my career ended. If I was going to be a tap dancer, I had no idea I'd get ensconced in the thick of it with the best. You know? By hook or crook, that happened. And I feel like I'm a walking history book of some of that.
You are. We appreciate that.
So I'm going to do the best tonight to give you the best of what I got left. You might have seen me get a little sentimental, and I still got tears in my eyes about some of that stuff I described. The part about my father. That guy stuck with me all the way through high school. And my mother. I was raised well in Chicago. Yeah. And that got me a little full. Yeah.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. I personally want to say this has been a pleasure for me to be able to sit and just listen and absorb all of the information. Like I said, you found out I did a bunch of research and then learned all about you, but getting all these little nuances is just, you made my day.
That surprised me so much. I didn't know you knew about it.
I don't play. If I'm gonna learn about something, I'm gonna learn about somebody. I'm gonna learn about something. You ask him. If I'm gonna learn, I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna try to learn everything about your whole life. Everything. And that's what I was talking to him about it. We were up all last night talking about it. You didn't go to sleep at all. I was telling him stuff I had learned. He was filling in the gaps and everything. And so I thank you for coming and sharing your life and everything and bringing Chester along. And oh my God, what the Olympics in, was it LA? 84 to 84 Olympics? Yeah, and you were tap dancing. Yeah, this man has done some amazing, like we didn't even get into all of it, like even a little bit of it. And that's why I wish we had more time to go through this stuff with him. But he does have information that you guys can start looking up on the internet if you wanted to learn more about him. He does have a Facebook page. You can go look at that too. But thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Going to Google and type in Skip Cunningham. And the whole resume there. Performances too, yeah.
Thank you for coming to our lunchtime lecture with the legends. Chester Whitmore, Skip Cunningham, and I'm Huang.